So a buddy of the show, Jesse P. Pollock, his book comes out this week called The Acid King, about Ricky Casso.
Yeah. The Say You Love Satan Killer is also a name that they tie to that case.
Yeah, and so I talked to him on the phone for a little bit, but what we thought was pretty interesting was he was arrested wearing it's pretty famous arrest picture, and Ricky is wearing a ACDC shirt. So we figured, hey, what's your top 5 ACDC songs?
Well, and keep in mind here, the reason why this is kind of part of the news story, you're like, well, who cares what kind of shirt he was wearing? No. In 1984, that's part of the news story, because at that time going on in this country was the Satanic Panic, and also the thought that there was, a lot of Satanist type stuff, Satanism type things in heavy metal music and in their videos.
Yeah, AC/DC, After Christ, Devil Christ.
Yes, and AC/DC caught a bad name for that during this time. And not only did we have Ricky Casso, who's arrested wearing AC/DC t-shirt, we had Richard Ramirez, who claimed that
your favorite.
The song, no, not my favorite, but
your favorite.
He's the reason why I have a security system at my house. He thought that the song Night Prowler was like, I don't remember if he thought it was about him, which is off of AC/DC's album Highway to Hell. But he said he would drive around listening to AC/DC to get ramped up for what would eventually be a break-in and a murder later that night. And I don't know if he thought the song Night Prowler was about him or kind of his anthem, but that was the one that he cited publicly that I'm sure, AC/DC's like, keep our name out your mouth, son.
Yeah.
We're not associated with Richard Ramirez.
We're just here for some rock and roll. But yeah, so let's get to the list. We'll start with your number 5.
My number 5, I picked in this song. I knew we were doing this morning, so when I drove over here, this song was in my head the whole way, and it's because it's very catchy.
Well, you just put it on Apple Music and rock it out.
Who Made Who, off of the 1986 album Who Made Who, which was the soundtrack for the Stephen King film Maximum Overdrive. The first line of the song, which kind of really represents what the movie is about, is the video game says, "Play me." And if anybody's seen that movie or read the book that's based off of, the idea of that horror flick is that at some point the machines become in control and try to kill off the humans. The machines are telling the humans what to do. And you could tell they wrote this song specifically for the movie, just with that opening line. Yeah. The video game says, "Play me."
Another good song of theirs that was written for a movie was Big Guns.
Yeah.
Wasn't that written for like Last Action Hero or something?
Yeah.
Or maybe Terminator. I'm not really for sure.
I think it was Terminator.
Number 5 on my list. I there's a tie, and I don't know if you'll remember this, but so I have If You Want Blood.
You got it.
You got it.
Yeah, great song.
Tied with Big Balls, and the reason why is I don't think Big Balls is that great of a song.
But she's got big balls. I've got big balls.
And we've got the biggest balls of them. But I just remember being at church camp.
Should get those balls looked at.
And I, because at the time AC/DC was played a lot on the radio. Wasn't a huge fan. I was a kid.
Well,
I didn't understand rock and roll.
In our town, they picked like 3 or 4 AC/DC songs, and those were the ones that they played all the time on the radio. Yes. So you weren't getting the good stuff. You were getting the very radio stuff.
Yeah, and I just remember being at this church camp, and one of the mentors or chaperones or whatever, they're like teenage kids, and we were on this trip to go ride horses, and I just remember... the chaperone or whatever was like, "Here, take my headphones." And it was like, cool. And I was listening, and it was the Big Balls song, and it was hilarious. And of course, this teenager knew, like, I'm going to give him this song, and this kid's going to find this hilarious.
Right.
And so that song always has a little special place in my balls. Okay, so number 4.
Safe in New York City. almost 11 million views on YouTube off of the incredibly underrated Stiff Upper Lip album, AC/DC's 14th studio album released in 2000. But this became one of my favorite AC/DC songs after the 9/11 attacks in 2001. The chorus is "I feel safe in New York City," and this song always made me kind of rally behind that feeling of this is our country, man.
Right.
This is our land, and you ain't going to come in here and mess with us.
All right, my number 4 was your number 5.
Who made who?
Who made who?
Who made you?
Ain't nobody told you. Like, oh man, this rock and roll. Okay, number 3.
Number 3, Rock and Roll Ain't Noise Pollution, off of the Back in Black album, one of the most iconic heavy metal albums of all time.
That is a great song. That didn't make my list, and maybe it should have. My number 3 is "It's a Long Way to the Top if you want to rock and roll."
Yeah, you know what? That's interesting. That our number 3s are similar in the sense that it's like rock and roll as a business. You know, rock and roll. I'm on the road. I'm out here doing this in front of you people. Yeah.
Well,
Fire!
no. Yeah, but I think it's I like "It's a Long Way to the Top if you want to rock and roll" because it can be applied to anything in life. Like, I mean, we're rocking and rolling right now with the podcast, but in the early days, it was just grind. It's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll.
And you want to talk about how long of a way it is. We're not even to the top yet, and we've been doing this for years.
We don't even know.
I can't see the top, man.
We don't even know if they're going to allow us to the top.
I can see the bottom.
I can still see the bottom. All right, number 2.
Oh, man. This goes way back for me. This has been one of my favorite hard rock, heavy metal songs for a long, long, long time. "Shoot to Thrill" off of the Back in Black 1980 album. This song, from my understanding, was written about Angus Young, the lead guitar player. And it was written because the singer says, hey, when Angus is playing a live show, it's like watching an outlaw, like watching a gunslinger or some guy with a machine gun. That's his performance. Yeah. And so the whole idea is this is a guy, man. He's not just a rock and roller, but he shoots to thrill. He plays to kill. And it's off of Back in Black, but it also got a big resurgence when the Iron Man 2 movie came out.
Yeah.
And this was practically like their main song, I think, of that movie.
Yeah. Mine, number 2, "For Those About to Rock, We Salute You." And what I love about it is when you just think of the term "for those about to rock," it's not "for those who are rocking, we salute you." It's like, for those just even thinking about rocking, we salute you. And coming from teaching guitar for, I don't know how, 11 to 13 years, somewhere around there. It's almost like they were nodding even to the kids. Hey, if you're even going to attempt to grab a guitar and think about being in a rock band, which I think we need more of, we can't have Jack White and David Grohl be in every rock and roll band that's popular. We need more kids picking up the guitars and making some good music.
Hard rock's really kind of died off. Like there's just not as many people doing it anymore, and it's a shame because I love hard rock. I especially love AC/DC. I probably, I never like to do a top 5 or top 10 bands because that changes almost daily for me. That's
why you could do one every day.
Yeah, that's basically, it's off of what kind of mood I'm in. But AC/DC for me has always been one of those bands that was great to drive your car to on the freeway,
Yeah.
Maybe do a little weightlifting or do a little working out. And I'll tell you what, they're very good. They're a very good drinking band.
Well, like we said, I mean, we were doing this list and you said you got locked in your office, headphones blazing,
chair dancing.
Beers flowing till 2:00 in the morning.
I lined up like 4 beers so I wouldn't have to get up from my desk to go to the refrigerator.
You just need a refrigerator in your office.
And a colostomy bag so I don't have to, or just wear a diaper and just sit in it.
Just pee. Just let it flow, my friend.
All right, with all that, how about...
With all that pee happening, number 1.
Ain't No Fun, Waiting Round to Be a Millionaire off of the 1976 album Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap with the original singer, the late, great Bon Scott. This is probably my favorite AC/DC album of all time, featuring songs like the title track, Problem Child, Love at First Feel, Ride On, Squealer. I mean, that album is just incredible for me, and my favorite song off of it, 100%. Ain't No Fun Waiting Round to Be a Millionaire.
It's funny. So my buddy Morgan, we decided to have fake names in college, and there it was for no reason. Just kind of we thought it was hilarious. So I was Brandon Cameron because you have to. The idea was that you'd have 2 first names. So Brandon Cameron, and then his was Connor Galloway, which Galloway is not so much a first name, but. So I was Brandon Cameron. He was Connor Galloway. And we had our buddy with us, Dave. And we went to this party. And I was like, hey, fake names? And Matt was like, yeah, because it was fun. Because it was always nice to introduce yourself. Brandon Cameron. Connor Galloway. And we would be cracking up while we did it. So he's like, I need a fake name. And so we called him Bon Scott. And every time we went to a party, we'd be like, and this is Bon Scott. And he'd just like not know what to do. He's like, hey, nice to meet you. I'm Bon Scott. And maybe one time somebody said, isn't that the singer from ACDC, the first singer of ACDC? And we're like, yeah, he was named after him. Duh. So my number 1, Thunderstruck.
Oh, yeah. Good choice. Good list.
And this is okay. So we only had one overlapping song.
Who made who?
So Who Made Who might be their best song because it overlapped on our list.
Well, I'll tell you what, for the people that are younger than us, and actually we're a little young to kind of know this too, but having gone back and listened to some of their old stuff, like I said, their favorite album of mine is a 1976 album. I wasn't even alive then.
Yeah, I'm 13 and a half today.
And
it's my half birthday.
So for the younger people out there that might want to check out some AC/DC, or they're like, I don't really like AC/DC. It's just typical heavy metal, guitar, gunslinging, hard rock. Their older stuff has a lot of like punk feel to it at times, and it has some blues rock feel to it at times. So they're
no. Look, we gotta stop doing this, okay? Because when I was a kid, I remember somebody said to me, "Oh, you play music?" Yeah, I play a little music. You like the Beatles? I didn't like the Beatles at the time. No, I don't like the Beatles. And it wasn't like, hey, well, that's before your time. These guys would say, well, you better learn, kid.
Right.
And so if you don't like AC/DC, you better learn, kid. That's what we need to start doing. We need to start judging a little bit more. Hey, you don't like AC/DC? You better learn.
Well, and I referenced that they did like 14 or so studio albums. But the great thing about AC/DC is if you just want to like check them out and kind of get a whole bunch of good stuff at once on the cheap, they did a bunch of live albums, and they sound incredibly good live.
On the cheap, go to Apple Music and you can listen to all their songs for whatever
I'm still an album guy.
I know.
I still like
no,
CDs.
albums are cool, but
CDs sound real good.
That's what I love about Jack White, for example, though. He's a big vinyl guy. And he said, of course, I love vinyl. And when you listen to vinyl and you put it on at your house, it's a different experience. He's like, but when I get in my car, Apple Music, Spotify, go with technology. I got a million songs in my phone. Here we go. But here's one thing that I challenge you to do sometime.
Okay.
With Thunderstruck. So I was doing some CrossFit type workouts, and they do this Thunderstruck workout.
Okay.
And
does it involve the chant by the rest of the band, Thunder?
Well, it involves the word thunder. Anytime he says the word thunder, you have to do a burpee, which is, you fall down and you get back up and you clap above your head, right? So there's multiple things you can do. You could do jump rope in between. There's a bunch of different things you can do.
Squat thrust.
Whatever your constant is. No, you want your constant to be not that hard.
You want something in between the burpees.
Right.
Gotcha.
The burpee is going to be the hard part. So I go to this CrossFit class. Great coach, bass player. He'd always play Rage Against the Machine. Like anytime he was coaching, all workout long was Rage Against the Machine. So this guy was awesome. Or Primus. And sometimes people would like start going, you got to turn this off. And I'm like, this is the best class ever. Rage Against the Machine and Primus. So he comes in and says, okay, start doing jumping jacks. And every time they say the word thunder, do a burpee. And by the end of it, I thought I was going to die. And that was our warm up for the day. So if you want to challenge yourself, do jumping jacks. And every time they say thunder, because they say it a lot. So let's check out this interview. It's more of a conversation with our good friend Jesse P. Pollock about his book, The Acid King. All right. It's great to be with you and talking with you, Jesse P. Pollock. Because like you said, there's another Jesse Pollock out there, and we're going to have to hunt this guy down.
We're going to have to kill him, hollow him out, and live in him like the animal he is.
And then, well, you go ahead and do that, and then me and Nick will do a podcast about it.
Oh, man, we talked to this guy twice. We didn't think he was going to do anything that drastic. That's some first blood shit.
Yeah, well, I don't know, because the first time I talked to you, it almost ended up in fisticuffs.
Oh,
that's how we became friends.
Yeah. No, that's the great legacy that social media is going to leave. The total lack of nuance that leads to total misunderstandings. But no, to your credit, you didn't kick my ass, which I probably deserved, and we worked it all out. I still think it would have been funny though if we started that part 4 of that series with just like the sound effect of like a door being kicked down, and just like, I heard you were talking some shit, but alas.
Yeah, people would have been like, what the heck is going on?
Hashtag podbeast is what's going on.
It was just so funny too, because we put it out with the intent of, one, trying to get a hold of you, and also with the intent of really kind of hitting home, which we've done with every author. Like, hey, a lot of the information we got from this case is from this book. Buy the book, support the author. We just didn't get to that part yet. So
I had no idea it was going to be a multi-part series. It is just, I had heard, True Crime Garage just did an episode about your book. And then like I listened to it and I was like, they didn't mention the book. And then so like I got, my ego got bruised there. And then when I finally got a hold of you, because it took a while, because I think you were out doing something for most of that day. And then like finally we're like, no, dude, like we're saving that as the reveal for episode 2. This is a multi-parter. And I'm like, oh, well shit, now I feel bad. Still do feel bad, but I'm glad that we were able to work it out.
It was funny.
It's funny now.
The funny thing too. The funny thing was, like, when I called you the first time, I was like, okay, here, let's see how this is going to go. and the book we're talking about is The Devil's Teeth.
Yeah, Death on the Devil's Teeth, the first book that I co-authored with Mark Moran from Weird New Jersey. Came out about 3 years ago now.
Yeah, you've done a lot of work with Weird New Jersey.
Going back about 20 years now, yeah. I think my first short form piece, which I think was either a letter or a tiny article, was... I think the either the May issue or the October issue of 2001. So they've been dealing with me for far too long.
Yeah, and if anybody's not familiar with Weird New Jersey, they should just check out anything that they put out. I don't think there's been a bad thing that I've seen that they put out.
No, and it's not just New Jersey too. Like, and you don't have to be from New Jersey to appreciate like the bizarre and creepy and real morbid stuff that comes out in that magazine. But if you are state centric, there are a whole bunch of coffee table books out there that the Weird brand has produced over the years. There's Weird Ohio, Weird Indiana, Weird California, Weird Texas, which was written by my friend Heather Shade. James Willis did Weird Ohio. A lot of paranormal researchers out there will know that name. And in addition to that, there's also the Weird US. I think there's actually 2 volumes of Weird US coffee table books. And then there was even a TV series for the History Channel. So there's a lot of weird to go around, thankfully.
Yes. I don't know why that cracked me up, but
it's all very carny. It's carnival barking.
There's a ton of weird stuff out there, but that book was amazing. And
Well,
you have
you.
a new book that's coming out. Well, of course, we thought it was amazing. We did a 4-part episode on it. But then there's this new book that you've been working on that we talked about. Let's see, when the heck did we first?
That was back in February friends? When we did the interview, wasn't it? Yeah, that was a while ago.
Yeah, and you were working on the book, The Acid King, which, from this is just what the internet is telling me, The Acid King is supposed to be out October 16th.
Yes, the paperback and the Kindle are being released by Simon & Schuster on Tuesday the 16th. And then, because of some wonderful Canadian paper tariffs that were implemented last summer, the hardcover has been delayed until November 6th. So if you pre-ordered the hardcover, it's going to be late. But find me on Twitter at @JPollockAuthor. Send me a screenshot of your receipt and I'll hook you up.
Okay, so The Acid King. Who is The Acid King?
Well, that's the $6 million question now, isn't it? The Acid King was the nickname.
They paid you $6 million to write the book?
Holy shit, man. If they paid me $6 million to write that book, I'd buy my own damn force so I wouldn't have to worry about these tariffs screwing over the hardcover. But no, far from it. But no, the Acid King was the nickname of a fella named Ricky Casso. And Ricky Casso became known worldwide in the summer of 1984 when he was arrested for murdering a friend of his named Gary Lowers in what the press and the police referred to as a ritualistic satanic sacrifice. So
Dark.
It's not deviating too far from what we talked about with the Devil's Teeth stuff.
And Ricky was kind of the typical teenager where he's wearing, ACDC shirts. He's into heavy metal. He's into Ozzy Osbourne. He's into Black Sabbath.
Well, yeah, he was sort of prototypical, American suburban middle class kid. Grew up in Northport, Long Island, which is a little village, less than 8,000 people on the North Shore in Suffolk County. His mother kind of split her time between working in the office at the local high school and being a homemaker. He was one of 4 children, so I mean that obviously takes up a lot of time. And his father was a social studies and history teacher at Cold Spring Harbor High School. He was also a widely recognized high school football coach, a wrestling coach. He had won many awards for doing it. So to say that this kid kind of had the prototypical Mayberry sort of existence would not be an understatement. But unfortunately, as such, the kid had a lot of pressure on him to succeed. He was the oldest of the 4 children. He was the only boy. So his father did expect this kid, to, excel in sports and excel in school. It kind of ended in disaster.
So this kid's into rock and roll. His dad's an authority figure, so that might be some of the problem there. But now you said Northport. Now, isn't Northport connected with... Is that connected to Amityville somehow?
It's only a half hour away. And Amityville's also in Suffolk County. It's on the South Shore. And we may have time to get into it a little bit later, but I definitely get into it in the book. But there is an Amityville connection in this case, and it's pretty spooky.
Well, Suffolk County is also Long Island serial killer, right?
Yeah. Yeah, oh, definitely.
So-
Suffolk County's got no shortage of the macabre.
No, it doesn't seem so at all. So
No.
So we have this kid that's, Mr. Rock and Roll, let's call. His dad is an authority figure. He's a wrestler. I can just imagine, his it's like the Breakfast Club when the wrestler sits there and says, you got to win. You can't be a loser.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, his sister, who I interviewed for the book, told me all about that. She said, I remember one wrestling meet that I went to, and I watched him, get pinned by someone else. And she was like, my dad flipped out. And I think they even asked him to leave. And she was like, can you imagine how embarrassing that must have been for my brother, who was only 12 or 13 at the time? It was, the father wanted the kid to be the next Johnny Unitas. And, if that's the kind of person your dad is, when you get into that normal teenage rebellion phase, yeah, you're going to become Mr. Rock and Roll to rebel against him, which is, I think it's kind of funny. It's kind of like how, when your father's Ozzy Osbourne, how do you rebel against that? You become a nerd like Jack Osbourne.
Right. Hey, Jack did put together some amazing concert series for people. So
he is a really, really talented dude. And as much as I goof on him for being, the nerdy son of Ozzy, I mean, the projects that he's been doing, like that film that he did, the documentary with him and his old man, like that was great. And he's got some TV stuff going on. So, I mean, more power to him. The kid did well.
Well, and Jack's been actually talking a lot because he was diagnosed with MS. And he's been doing a lot of great work of speaking on being diagnosed and what that has meant to him, and now being a father. And so, so back to the Acid King. I'm going to say it about a million times because I think it's really, I mean, you hit a home run with the Devil's Teeth. You can't get better of a title than that to me.
Yeah.
The Devil's Teeth.
It just kind of got handed to me essentially because if you go back and you flip through the archival news coverage and the newspaper photos and all this stuff, the park downtown where this kid used to hang out and, deal drugs and ingest drugs, it was spray painted everywhere. Ricky, the Acid King, and the kids called him that, pretty much because by the time he was 16 years old, he was the chief distributor of hallucinogenics in Northport. It got to the point where he was taking very, very dangerous trips into the South Bronx. And mind you, this is the South Bronx in the early 80s when, Ronald Reagan very famously said it looked like a bombed out war zone.
Yeah.
And he was going in there as this, gangly 16-year-old white kid, asking, for, like, all right, I need purple microdots to sell. I need PCP. I need LSD. And then carting all that stuff back to suburban white bread, Northport, and selling it essentially to support himself. By the time he was 16 years old, his father had thrown him out, pretty much, wiped his hands of him, and the kid was sleeping in the woods.
Yeah. Now, is it wrong for me to say that Ricky, quote unquote, the Acid King, I mean, he kind of looks like a younger Kid Rock?
I never thought of that, but now, yeah, in that famous booking photo, I can kind of see it.
Yeah. Ooh, so I mean, like, if anybody's trying to,
definitely not a partying patriot, though.
Right. And so, okay, so Ricky is then distributing drugs for people. That's how he's getting the name the Acid King, and probably also using these drugs as well.
Oh, yeah, definitely. He had been using hallucinogenic drugs since at the very least 7th grade. I've talked to friends and classmates of his while writing the book that one of them told me, a famous story that some of you listening might already be familiar with. But when he was in art class in 7th grade, he was sitting next to a friend and he was drawing a picture of a dragon while he was hallucinating on purple microdot, which everyone back then called mescaline, MESC for short, because that's what they thought it was. But in reality, what these little tablets were, it was a mixture of PCP, dirty acid, and strychnine. So the stuff that these kids were ingesting at a young age was, pretty risky stuff. And like I said, his friend was telling me, like, oh yeah, I'm just sitting there, and I'm asking him, what are you drawing? He's like, oh, a dragon, it's moving. He's like, what? No, yeah, it's moving off of my page. It's like, what are you on? Oh, purple microdot. And this is 7th grade. Most according to the statistics that I read, who knows how reliable they are, but most American youth don't first start experimenting with drugs until about 8th or 9th grade, and they usually start with pot. But in Northport, you had a lot of kids with older brothers, and in the early 80s, late 70s, their older brothers had lived through the counterculture of the late 60s. So, they had this wonderful grab bag of, let me get my older brother's copies of Crawdaddy and Cream, and I'll take those Pink Floyd records, please. And then, sooner or later, they're sharing joints with each other. And when you're starting with pot that early, eventually, and I'm not saying pot is a gateway drug, but what I am saying is in the boredom of Long Island suburbia of the late 70s and early 80s, eventually these kids got curious about, okay, well, what's the next step? Let me try some acid, let me try mescaline. And then eventually, PCP made its way in, and all hell kind of broke loose.
I'm not a pot smoker myself. I actually, but I think everybody should smoke pot, because I think everybody would chill out. It'd be nice. But there's a lot of studies that are done that say, hey, if these young kids, let's say 10, 12-year-olds, 14-year-olds are smoking pot, that before the age of 20, it can really do some shifts in your brain mentally. And so it's really like, if you're going to experiment with drugs in general, hey, let's kind of wait till the brain's a little more developed to do so. And
yeah, if I might quote South Park, there's a time and a place for everything, and it's called college.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of true. But yeah, so he's taking acid.
Mm-hmm.
He's dropping acid. What did you call it? It was a purple what?
Purple microdot. It's something you really don't see anymore, but it was popular, like I said, in the late 70s and early 80s. There were these little tablets. They were very small, and like I said, most people thought that they were made of mescaline, but which is, I believe, from the peyote plant. If I'm not, I'm showing my true drug colors here. I'm a real nerd with it and don't know too much about that stuff. But
they could have had a cooler name, like call it like Purple Urple or something, Purple Masculine. I'd be like, no. I want to take some of that Purple Urple.
Yeah. But they basically thought it was this other drug, mescaline, when really it was this bizarre, cheapo concoction of rat poison and, low grade LSD and PCP. And so these kids were getting some pretty intense highs from the stuff that they were ingesting, not injecting, as early as, 12, 13 years old.
With the acid trips, I've been reading a lot of stuff about DMT and acid trips and stuff like that, and them meeting jesters, dark jesters, and a lot of these people have these trips. It's almost like they see the same individuals, and it's almost like a gateway to unlocking some spirituality inside your own body and seeing these dark
Spoiler alert, that jester is Joe Rogan.
Okay.
Joe Rogan loves talking about DMT.
Yes, and this is where I've heard some of the stuff from, and so then you kind of wonder with Ricky being so young, what the heck was he experiencing in his brain, and did that have the cause and effect of then him becoming a killer?
Well, I'm a firm believer in multi-causality, which is something that a previous journalist who worked on this case, a guy named David Breskin, really turned me onto through his research. He went to Northport within days of Ricky being arrested for killing Lowers, and spent several weeks there integrating himself with Casso's peers working on this story for Rolling Stone called Kids in the Dark. And it's a great long-form piece. I encourage anyone who wants to learn more about this case before picking up my book to go over to David Breskin's website, and he's got PDFs of that original Rolling Stone article on there. But basically, the three big causes I think here, we already talked about the pressures in the home and the breakdown of the relationship between him and his father, being thrown out to live in the woods. We've talked about the very, very significant amount of drugs that this kid was using by the time he was 17 years old. And the third factor in this is the kid had an undeniable obsession with the macabre. As time went on with this story, the press and the police sort of distorted elements of his confession and his reputation around town, and it somehow got out that, he was the leader of this satanic cult, and the murder happened in front of a bonfire, and there were a dozen, chanting, robed members of this cult doing incantations, when in reality, I mean, this was a kid who felt wronged by everyone around him, and sort of took solace in these spooky books that he would pick up from the library. And I'm sure a lot of people listening to true crime, podcasts out there can totally commiserate with that. I mean, me personally, I was the nerd in the library checking out all the ghost and Bigfoot books when I was a kid. And that's probably why I'm a paranormal podcaster when I'm not writing murder books. And he was one of those kids. And that kind of evolved by the time he was 17 into picking up a copy of the Satanic Bible. His friends say he got really, really into that. And that became kind of his way of, I would say, striking back against society. It's like, okay, I've been cast away by my family. I've been cast away by my peers. I abandoned school. I don't have a conventional job. But I'm a Satanist. I'm someone in the realm of that, belief system. And he used it as a way to stand out and as a way to scare people, to be honest. So when you combine these three things, the breakdown of his family relationship, the occult obsession, and the enormous drug intake, it was a total recipe for disaster.
Yeah, and this is just the tip of the iceberg because there's, like you said, possibly three causations, maybe more, and then the diving of the details of each one of those, and then the diving of the details of the actual crime, and then there's kind of two stories: the story that the cops and the media want you to believe, and then the story that really happened. So even if you have researched a lot of stuff about the Acid King, you don't know the true story, and that's kind of why you did the book.
Yeah, definitely. What had happened was after Death on the Devil's Teeth was released, my agent got a phone call from an editor at Simon & Schuster, and they were saying, hey, we're getting ready to start up this new true crime line called Simon True. And we really want to appeal to the teenage market, the quote unquote YA brand, because true crime is huge right now. It's dominating every part of media culture, whether it's Netflix's or HBO's great true crime programming that's coming out now, podcasts like the one that we're on, and books like the ones I wrote. It's big right now. It's not to sound callous, but true crime is hot. As from a marketing standpoint. So they said, we would like to put together a line of books that are written with a teen audience in mind. Do you know anyone that would be able to write something like that? And, since Devil's Teeth, discussed Janetta Palma, who was 16, my agent said, yeah, my client Jesse Pollock could write something for you. So once we had some meetings, they said, listen, we think you can do this based on your first book. We want a case where the victim and the killer are both teenagers. Do you know a story that would fit that criteria? And I said, yeah, right off the bat, the Ricky Casso case out on Long Island. Ricky was 17 and so was his victim, Gary Lowers. And they said, okay, go ahead and, write this book. And there already was a prior book that came out in 1987 called Say You Love Satan by David Sinclair. And I had bought a copy of that while working on Devil's Teeth. I was like, oh, another Satanic Panic case. Let me read this for some, background. And I enjoyed the book. It's a little cheesy in parts, but I enjoy some 80s cheese occasionally. but I was under the impression it was the true story. It was a national book. It came out through Dell, a reputable publisher. And I just thought, okay, what I will do for my book is I will use for the Acid King, I will use Say You Love Satan as the springboard. I will re-interview all these people, get some new information. I will get the original case files through the Freedom of Information Act and tell an updated version of this story. And almost immediately, when I started interviewing the people from Northport back then, I found out that Say You Love Satan is 90% fiction, and the 10% that isn't was plagiarized from David Breskin's Rolling Stone article. So then it became a twofold sort of thing. It's like, okay, well, not only do I have to tell an updated version of the story with the benefit of modern fact checking, but I've got to give these people their story back because there was an injustice done here. This writer came into town, was largely rebuffed by the community because it had only been 3 years. They weren't ready to talk about this again. And so instead of going back to his publisher and saying, sorry, I couldn't get anyone to talk to me, I don't think there's a book here, he just figured, fuck it, I'll make the rest of it up. And boy, did he. So for the last 3 years, I've just been trying to, as petty as this sounds, undo what he did with that book because, it ruined a lot of lives. For years, a lot of these people I interviewed couldn't tell anyone they were from Northport because people outside of Northport, this is pre-Google, this is pre-social media. So like me, the same reaction I had to it, they figured, oh, well, this is a book. It's a real book. It's 400 pages long. It's by Dell. This must be the true story. And it wasn't. So anyone out there who's looking for properly researched true crime and not sensationalism, you're going to find it in the Acid King.
Well, and you're finding that a lot now with these quote-unquote documentaries where people watch these true crime documentaries and they walk away thinking the person's innocent or guilty. And you go, they didn't even tell the whole story. So,
yeah, we saw that a lot with Making a Murderer.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's why it's almost like you don't have a problem giving your opinion, but you're more interested in telling what is than to just give your opinion.
Well, definitely. And even though I'm giving my opinion, it's still objective in the sense that my opinion is, okay, it's screwed up to mislead people because I've been duped. I bought a lot of these, poorly fact-checked books, if they were even fact-checked at all, when I was a kid and a teenager growing up. And then as, Google allowed this era of instant fact-checking and social media allowed people to connect, whether it's, reaching out to someone who was affected by a case or a law enforcement officer who worked it, you find out it's like, man, I gave all this money to these authors that sold me a bunch of bullshit. No one likes being ripped off. So, when it came time to write about these cases, I didn't want to be that guy. And even if it meant burning some bridges by telling people, listen, that author is full of shit about this, or, hey, Tom Brokaw screwed up the story, or, hey, this police department sent out, a bullshit press release that was self-serving in the middle of an election year, so be it. The true facts of these stories have to come out. Because it's real people you're dealing with, and people are still affected by it. I've sat in the living rooms of the families of a lot of these murder victims, and I tell you what, time does not heal all wounds. These people are still very much affected by what happened, and it's a double slap in the face to them to not only lose a family member or have your family destroyed by one of these incidents, but then to, turn on the television or log on to the internet and see nothing but lies being propagated and for profit. It's how do you not look at that and go, what can I do to help as a journalist? So that's, if I have any mission or any bias as a writer, it's that, like, get the true story back out there and hopefully let it be the final word.
So where can everybody find this book? When does it come out? Where is it going to be at? How can people find this?
The Acid King is going to be released on Tuesday, October 16th in paperback and Kindle. If you like to shop online, it's available on Amazon. It's on BarnesandNoble.com, Books A Million, IndieBound. And this is a national book through Simon & Schuster. So it'll be available in brick and mortar stores everywhere. If I would ask any potential readers anything, I would say give that store a call and just make sure that, you know, they have copies on hand, because it's a brand new book. Some stores get them, some stores don't. And it helps out true crime authors. It actually helps out any author. But, you know, if you're looking for true crime books, give Amazon a call. Ask them if they're going to be shipping them on time. Give Barnes & Noble a call. Ask them if it's going to be in the brick and mortar store or Books A Million, any of that, and just say, hey, I want this book. And it helps us out. It helps out our numbers. It helps us get the books in the hands of people who want them. And hopefully it gets the true story out there.
For all the listeners, get the Acid King. It's going to blow your mind, for one, but also, you know, Jesse wrote a great book called Death on the Devil's Teeth, and that's available. And what I'll do is I'll put a link on our website at truecrimegarage.com.
Very cool.
Awesome, man. It's always great to talk to you.
Always a pleasure to come on here. Oh, God. You know, fingers crossed. I would love to be the one to give you an exclusive on this, but I am very, very superstitious about jinxes. But I will say this. Book 3, my agent loves the proposal, and this week we are getting ready to send it out to publishers to see who's interested in it. But it will be another true crime case, and it will be an even more famous one than Ricky Casso. So cross your fingers.
Well, you can send me a message on Twitter about that. So you can
oh yeah,
you can give me a hint.
Oh yeah, no, I'll definitely give you a hint. And I tell you what, if luck is in my favor and the book gets picked up, I'll give you the exclusive for the announcement on it, because you guys have been great to me on this show.
Well, that's because we originally wanted to fight you.
Yeah, I gotta keep making up for that. So.
But then I saw a picture of you and I said, well, Jesse might actually take us down. And then I found
no way.
But then at first I was like, this son of a bitch lives in Jersey, so like it doesn't matter. I can talk shit to him. And then I found out that you don't live in Jersey anymore and you live really
No, we're like
close.
2 hours away from each other.
I know. You need to come down to Columbus and for us to get a bite to eat. So again,
yeah, no, dude, I definitely got to, because they got a great White Castle over in Marysville, so that's always a good excuse for me to get up by you.
I'm not going to a White Castle.
Because that's what I grew up with in New Jersey. You know, we go hang out at the White Castle, and then I moved out to where I am now, and I'm like, man, I got to drive all the way to Marysville to get White Castle. But no, all bullshit about fast food aside, we're working on a documentary adaptation of the Acid King. And, you know, definitely sometime within the next year, I got to get up there. Maybe we could get you and Nick on film for it, talking about the true crime legacy of the Satanic Panic.
That would be awesome. So everybody go out, get the Acid King today. Make this a big hit and success for our friend Jesse. And I'll talk to you soon, my friend.
Definitely. And big shout out to all of you listeners out there. I got a lot of followers on social media and a lot of emails from people that heard my interview back in February. And you all are some of the nicest people I have ever spoken to. You all left me a bunch of very touching reviews on Amazon. And whenever you reach out on social media, it just makes my day. So, you know, all you guys out there listening to True Crime Garage, you all kick ass.